Welcome back, everybody. It is time for Curling HD, where we're
Woohoo!
here to give you
Wait,
in-depth
what?
analysis of Team USA's thrilling last-second win over Italy today. Joby, what's your thoughts on?
Spoilers.
It was it was nothing like what they did to the UK. That was the real
How
matchup
much
because
did I
that's
have?
where medals will be made.
Okay, this is not Curling HD. This is Hoops HD.
I thought I was more drunk than usual for a second.
I'm your host, Chad Show. We got Joby Fortson and David Griggs up here, John Titella, John Stalika down below. Rocco Miller should be joining us in a few moments here, but we're here to talk about all the goings on in college basketball, and of course, you've been living, in the backwoods somewhere or something, maybe you haven't heard, but the rest of us know that within the last few hours here, the official ruling came down from the Alabama court that Charles Bediako is ineligible for the rest of the season. The judge, I read through his decision actually, but it really came down to the fact that there is no athlete that has ever, before Bediako, played in college, left to go pro, and then wanted to come back to college again. There are guys that played in the pros overseas and even in the G League that were slightly different. Those players had never gone into college before and left knowing they were giving up their eligibility and then coming back. Uh, Griggs, this is the NCAA's first win ever in court, I believe.
Yeah, it's been about 10 years, 15 years since a major decision went the NCAA's way, at least one that I can remember. I gotta be honest, you were saying, Chad, that you thought the NCAA was going to win this one. I was not convinced. I thought they had a case. I did not think they made a good argument. It's not the one I would have made, but I guess it was one that was good enough. One of the things that happened, Betty Yako's attorney made one of the most ignorant and perhaps moronic arguments in the history of law. He said that if he were not declared eligible, he would not be able to complete his education due to the cost of going there. This ignored several things. Mainly, NCAA rules allow for players that have exhausted eligibility to complete their degrees at the schools, have it paid for, and they're not a counter. You would have thought the NCAA would have pointed that out, but they didn't. So, I mean, it was
Well,
just sort of
actually,
double boneheadedness.
the judge didn't even go that way with that argument. The judge
Yeah,
instead just simply went with there is the fact that there's nothing preventing him from staying enrolled in schools and finishing his degree. And if he
yeah,
has to pay for it, so what?
yeah.
Uh, but Titel, any thoughts on what I think was like Greg said, I think it was a completely correct decision.
I think it was correct. I just didn't think it was the one that was going to happen.
I agree with both those points. I would prefer to focus my comments on the on-court performance. He played 5 games for the Tide, averaged 10 points, 5 rebounds, and he shined. I mean, like he shot 77% from the field in limited action. He never played more than 25 minutes in any game. He had 7 boards and 4 blocks against Florida in a loss. He had 12 points, including 5 of 5 from the field in a win over Auburn. So, as far as the committee looks at it, Alabama is now down a 7-footer who had played very well. He only started 2 of the 5 games, so I think that when you're evaluating him on selection, when you're evaluating the team on Selection Sunday, there's a gaping hole in the middle, and if they don't fill it with somebody who can give them that sort of performance, I think Alabama might drop a seed line or so.
Yeah, in Alabama, the committee's already said Alabama will be evaluated based on the team that they will have going to the tournament, which is kind of the rule, same rule they use for injuries. If you have a significant
Yeah.
player, a la Kenyon Martin in 2000, goes out right before the tournament, you could get knocked down a line. Uh, Joby, uh, I think it really comes down to what does Alabama do the next 5 weeks.
100%. And luckily for Alabama, they're going to have opportunities. Their resume has a chance to really improve or evolve or devolve depending on their performance. So we're going to actually forget this episode, I think, for the most part. Uh, I mean, they're going to be evaluated on what they look like over these next few weeks in what is going to be a competitive group of games. And so, you know, this isn't a situation like, uh, maybe UConn or something which might not have as many opportunities in the Big East or St. John's. It's this the SEC is going to give Alabama a number of opportunities. I think Auburn again, for instance, while they'll be at home, they will have other opportunities against tournament caliber teams.
Yeah,
Well, I
and
think you also alluded to something else here. Auburn wasn't the only team that had to face Bediako. Texas A&M and Missouri also had some close losses against the Tide, and now they suddenly have an extenuating circumstance as to why that happened.
they do. I know there are a few people out there that are already calling for those games to be forfeited
That
because
will
they were
not
playing
happen.
an ineligible player.
He
My
was not
position here is
ineligible. At the time of the game, he was not ineligible.
there was a court order saying he is eligible to play those games. That it's not like if they had played him without the court order, and then
Yeah.
we didn't realize he'd been in the NBA or something like that. That's a
Did the
different story.
did someone from the enforcement staff, and if this was not communicated publicly, maybe it was a rumor I heard, you don't know. I thought the enforcement staff had publicly said they're not even considering forfeiting them, making them forfeit the games. They couldn't do that if they wanted
No,
to.
no, they're not doing that. Let me get
Yeah.
one more opinion on the whole Bediako thing. Rocco Miller joining us. Uh, Rocco, great to see you. We're just finishing up talk of Bediako. I want to get your thoughts on the fact that he is gone goodbye.
Yeah, it just seems like it was all very unnecessary. But I guess the NCAA finally got their way with one of these players. It was really important, like we talked about, because of the precedent that it could set for the NBA draft in the future, foregoing your eligibility. Obviously has a lot of consequences for future eligibility standards. So good that there's a little bit of a balance finally somewhere. And I think when it pertains to the NCAA selection process, I think I heard Joby say it. Yeah, they'll just get evaluated how they play these last 6 to 8 games. And if it's similar to the level they've been playing at, I don't think it makes a big difference. If it's obviously if it's a crummier level, then you might see them slip an extra seed line, but I don't think it's going to be anything too dramatic.
I got to ask you one more big question, Rocco.
Yeah.
Where are you? And tell us about that hat.
This is well, first of all, rest in peace, Modesto Nuts. They are no longer a team. They just played their final season. The Mariners, single A affiliate, moving to Southern California next year. And I'm in a hotel like cafeteria. There's a weird echo in here. I
Okay.
apologize for the audio.
No, we love the weird places and sounds and echoes.
Yeah, it adds to the season, right? It definitely
Yeah.
adds to the season.
Uh, I did have one more legal question. Chad, you said you read the decision, and maybe Tytel, I know you both have legal backgrounds. Wasn't it sort of odd that the judge closed his decision with "War Damn Eagle"?
Okay. Let's just move on here. There's the buzzer. Okay. Let's go on to the actual what actually happened on the court. And we'll start with the SEC. I figured here, Alabama did get that win over A&M and the win over Auburn that we discussed. That we already discussed that there may be a bit of almost like an asterisk, like we have with the with an injury on those games. But as far as the rest of the SEC goes, well, Tytel, why don't we start with Auburn now? They do have that. It is a loss on their profile.
Yeah, Coach Bruce Pearl last year set a school record with 32 wins. I think his son Steven is going to struggle to win 20 this year. They did win 4 in a row last month, and including the huge road win at Florida, but they dropped each of their last two to Tennessee and the Tide. They're now tied for 10th in the conference standings at 5-5 in league play. Does not get much easier this week in terms of the schedule. Vandy comes to town Tuesday, road trip to Arkansas Saturday. The offense is fine. 85 points a game is top 30 in the nation. The defense needs, frankly, a lot of work. 78 points allowed a game is almost 300th in the nation. And UCF transfer Keyshawn Hall still looks like one of the best players in the league, 21.7 boards a game. And while I like point guard Todd Pettiford, he's got to stop shooting from behind the arc. He did make 3 of 8 in the loss to the Tide. In the 11 games before then, 12 of 65, just 18%.
We'll get to it a little bit later, but you just never know which Vanderbilt team is going to show up night in and night out.
Well, Sleeka, why don't we get to it right now? How about Vanderbilt? They had
Oh,
a real head scratcher at home to Oklahoma over the weekend.
I think what was a bigger head scratcher is they were actually down more than 20 points before they managed to pull off what was nearly a furious comeback. But after falling short in the closing seconds, Oklahoma actually got their second win of significance in the SEC, and now that's going to give Vanderbilt a damaging loss that potentially could cost them a protected seed, but we'll have to see how the Commodores react against Auburn now.
Yeah, Rocco, the other team of real note in the SEC this week was Kentucky. Pair of wins, including getting the sweep of Tennessee on the season now.
Yeah, really important. I mean, Kentucky's got a really nice resume. I know it's been a weird year because when they lost to Gonzaga, they got completely undressed. And same with when they went to Vanderbilt a few weeks ago. So they've had a couple really ugly showings that's hard to get out of your brain. But the wins they've collected in the other games, like at Arkansas, a sweep of Tennessee, as you mentioned, Chad, having the St.
The
John's
Johnnies.
in Indiana wins earlier in the year. So there's a really nice mix of wins. I think they're in the mix for a protected seed if they can keep pulling off close wins. Now they're going to go to Florida on Saturday this week, so it could be another 30 or 40 point loss. But yeah, if at the end of the day they're going to have a solid resume, so it's an interesting season.
Now, Rocco, the best description I've heard about Kentucky in that game was Mark Pope was nearly defrocked.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Oh God. Well, it is interesting, and Rocco brought up a good point because early in the year, Kentucky, they lose to Louisville, and I know you're going to say there's no shame in that, but Kentucky does not like losing to Louisville, and then they got blown out by Gonzaga, and I think their fans became so discouraged that they may not fully realize yet that they're actually turning it around and having a really big year. Look at the top of that profile. That is a good profile.
that's a good profile. They're back in the AP poll this week. Just missed the coaches poll, top 25. Uh, Joby, I think the one other team worth a moment here from this week in the SEC are the Horns. Now,
Yeah.
yes, it was a pair of home wins, but they're starting to
String
kind
them
of
together.
build up the wins that they needed against those top three quadrants, aren't they?
Yeah, they were already in a position where they were getting some wins that were important. Obviously at Alabama, screams at the very top of that. NC State early in the year, but they didn't have an overall record. Well, one of the reasons they didn't have the overall record is because they hadn't played kind of for lack of a word, the easy part of their schedule. And now they got a win over the Sooners, who, despite the win against Vanderbilt, Oklahoma's 2-9 in the conference, South Carolina, Ole Miss. Now you go, wait a minute. They've got a good overall record. Oh, and they have the wins to go along with it that it came naturally. Texas right now has played themselves into the tournament. I think there's no doubt right now that if the tournament started today, they would be in the tournament. I actually think, despite what I know the crew picked they did last night, I think they're above Dayton. Uh, they've got to now that they've put themselves in this position, they've got to continue through. They've got to win either the at Missouri or at Georgia games. Those are the two that I look at. They can probably split them and be okay. And then they can't stub their toe against LSU and Oklahoma, obviously. But if they can just play kind of 500 ball down the stretch now, um, I think that they're in pretty good shape.
I think another counterpoint is if they can only win the LSU and Oklahoma games, then you're looking at 17 and 14, but
They're
that's going to be
exactly,
16 and
John.
14 when you consider they also had the win against Chaminade. Now, what they also did last year, I believe they did have a couple wins in the SEC tournament to stabilize things, so they can't leave wins on the table when they get to Nashville. That much is certain.
Agreed, John. They got out of the soup, so to speak, of a lackluster record. If they do exactly as you say, go 2-5 or 2-6, losing in the first round of the SEC tournament on top of that, they're right back in the soup, and I think they might be out. But the way they're playing, I don't think they go 2-5. I think they go 4-4 ish. I think they'll go 500, and that's good enough in my book.
And I would say Georgia's probably the most likely one they pick off because
I agree.
Missouri's also going to be fighting for a bid themselves.
All right.
I agree.
We do have to move on, but Griggs, I want to give one more shout out to one score from this weekend. Florida, what they did at A&M was damn impressive.
Yeah, it was. Texas A&M for the first 8 minutes, or for the first really 12 or 15 minutes of that game, you started to wonder if the ball was overinflated. I mean, they just couldn't hit anything. Florida was hitting, but not them. It was Florida sprinted out ahead of them and just kept sprinting ahead of them. And I don't think the final score was indicative of just how badly Florida beat them. I like this A&M team. I know I've been championing them more than anybody, but after I was actually really impressed with their game earlier at Alabama. That game had, I think, was it Rocco? What was that? 213 lead changes or something like that in that game. It was, I mean, it was
Sounds about
just,
right.
yeah, it was just a highly entertaining, highly exciting, well played game. And even though they lost it, you're like, well, my God, if they can go to Bama and nearly win that one, they're going to be fine. They did not look fine at all on Saturday, and I'm starting to think you guys are right. They're eight seedish.
Let's take a quick look at the upcoming schedule. We've got some pretty good ones here, beginning tomorrow night with Vanderbilt going to Auburn, Florida at Georgia on Wednesday. That's the cocktail party, correct? Uh, Important game
Mhm.
for Missouri at A&M, Kentucky at
Georgia's
Florida.
going to want to be drunk for that game.
A&M's at Vanderbilt, Texas at Missouri. There's actually a lot of Auburn at Arkansas. Let's not
Yeah,
forget that one.
Texas, Mizzou, Bumplicious, A&M at Vandy, kind of a showcase, need to build up your resume type game. Auburn, I still think needs to compile wins. Kentucky probably shooting at the moon in that game, as good of a year as they've had. I just don't think they got it in them to go there. And Mizzou A&M, another sort of build up your resume type of game. So
Let's jump over to the Big East. I know Stalika, you don't want to talk about it after what your Musketeers almost pulled off tonight, but failed to do. But Taita, let me start with you. UConn suffers their first conference loss of the season back on Friday night. Here they are now tied with the Johnnies at the top of the conference standings. Uh, I guess maybe the question is, yes, they lost the one game, but is that it for losses for them this season?
yes.
I
Oh,
think
sorry. Go
so.
ahead,
I
John.
mean, I thought so before that game, and I was dead wrong, obviously. They hung around the whole game, and losing in the Garden by 9 points is certainly nothing to lose sleep about, especially because they were actually playing pretty well. They made 9 of 19 threes. Free throw shooting killed them, 5 of 12. But Ejiofor was almost unstoppable in the game of his life, arguably. So, yes, I'm not worried about the Huskies one bit. They certainly need to clean things up, but their defense, as you can see, top five in the nation. J&G has them as a four, so I think that having them at or near the one seed line the rest of the weeks ahead is perfectly reasonable.
I think the other question out of this, Rocco, what does this do for St. John's now? I get it. Chris would say it's only a home win, but they're the only one of two teams to beat UConn all season now.
That was still a very good win.
Yeah, it was
Mhm.
incredibly helpful because going into the weekend, St. John's had only beat one team in the field, and that would be Villanova. They had those Seton Hall victories went away for all the Big East hopefuls in terms of wins against the field. So they not only have a win against the field that they needed, but they have a heavy one, what we would call a gold level win. Although it's not on the road, it's still very good. It also evened up their quad one record to 4-4, and everything else is pretty spotless besides the home loss to Providence, which did not age well. In general, I think St. John's is a solid 5 seed for this moment, and then they are in the running, of course, to be a protected seed, and
And they're
that made that possible.
yeah, and they're lucky Xavier barfed on themselves because that would have been another tier three that could have been added to their ledger tonight.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that, Stalika, was they started the weekend 20th. They jumped up to 16th with the big win over UConn, and now they're right back to 20th with that poor performance against your boys.
Yeah. Uh, Villanova had a nice 2-0 week, helped putting some of the final nails in the Seton Hall coffin, who then loses to Creighton as well. But
And also ended what I think was a 4 or 5 game winning streak for Georgetown.
This is looking like a three-bit. It looks like they're going to put two teams as protected seeds, another team in the top half of the bracket, and everyone else in the crown, if that.
Which is why I know the entire crew is going to be pulling for Xavier to beat Villanova in a couple weeks just to watch the number potentially go down to 2 bids.
And
I'll
what
be
was,
honest.
yeah.
I think Villanova or St. John's rather is going to have a tough time even with the UConn win getting to the protected seed line, given that their competition will be piling up more wins against, as Rocco pointed out, against the field. If all of a sudden that Alabama team we were talking about does go ahead and they do produce without Bediako, I mean, Alabama's ahead of them because of what they've done even before Bediako, I might add,
Yeah,
Yeah.
including a win over. Oh yeah, 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 St. John's.
yeah.
Um,
You're right. You're right, Joby. As far as building a profile, I just think the Johnnies, they might not be placed in the protected seed range, but they are playing like one.
Yeah, I think the
Uh,
league.
Did you not watch the game tonight? Because they look not
No,
protected
no
seating.
spoilers.
No.
I have it DVR'd.
look,
Yeah, the league,
I'm
go
gonna
ahead.
Chad, I
watch it
think
with Stalika later.
Go
I
ahead,
think
Rocco.
the league definitely needs desperately needs a fourth team to get hot down the stretch. Finish 7-0, 8-0 to close it out to even sniffing at large, but also just if they can get a Big East bid stealer, it's going to sound crazy, but I actually thought Marquette looked really good last Saturday. They destroyed Butler. That was a team they lost to in January. And they're stringing together some good performances. They also blew out Creighton. I know Creighton's not the same. But I'm just trying to figure out who's going to actually step up and play well down the stretch in this
No
league.
one.
Now, if you really want chaos in the Big East bracket, just put Providence against UConn in the quarterfinals, put Xavier against St. John's, and you'll have two rather dangerous games right there.
Mhm. There we go. A couple interesting games this week. UConn road test at a Butler team that's had some life. St. John's, that revenge game this time on the road at Providence. And Creighton has had some life at times. Villanova's going to be at Creighton on Saturday. So there could be some upsets in the Big East
Yeah.
this week. Possible. Let's jump over to the Big Ten Conference, though. Uh, and Griggs, why don't we start off? Why don't we start off with the Illini? Uh,
Okay.
they crushed Northwestern, and they played a hell
Yeah.
of a game at Michigan State. I really thought they had the game won several times there.
Uh, I did too. Big win over their big rivals, Northwestern, and I think that was such an emotionally tense, charged, down to the wire game against a rival that they just were out of gas for Michigan State. Okay, that's a horrible take.
No,
That
let's just move on to somebody else, please.
Okay. Well, no, for that was a really impressive showing at Michigan State. They when they got it to overtime, and I know that when you're playing a ranked team and they're at home and the game goes to overtime, you kind of almost assume that the momentum's going to be with them. It was, but Illinois is so good that when they got it to overtime, my thought was, man, Michigan State really needed to win this one in regulation because Illinois is going to get them. They didn't, but how can you not be impressed with that, even though they didn't get the win? I still think they're playing as well as anyone in the country right now on the court. I know they weren't going at 100 miles an hour the entire season, but they're certainly doing it now. They have an unbelievably impressive profile. They almost got another win against a top 15 net team on the road. And this is a team, I know that I know that this defies what Chad says about how good teams win big games. I still think that this is a Final Four caliber team right now.
I think I agree with you a little bit on that. Joby, how about the team that that they lost to? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and Sparty
well, let's
needed
talk about
that
what happened a
win
couple
because
days earlier at Minnesota,
oh, the
especially.
Minnesota
Ooh,
loss is just yeah. What Sparty became a team because getting a win over Illinois for all the reasons Griggs laid out, it doesn't matter if it's at Breslin, that's still a great win. But man, you lose to Minnesota. Minnesota's a bad team. I mean, Big Ten is very top heavy and it's awesome at the top. Like I love these Big Ten teams at the top, but that bottom is bad. And they got victimized by the bad. And what I, Michigan State basically how I looked at them is they blot because there's like 13 to 14 teams. They kind of blot down to the 4 seed after the Minnesota game, but then I beat Illinois, so now I'm back on the 3 line. It's like they're very fortunate on that. Tom Izzo will get this team ready. As they always do. This who knows if they are yet another one of these Michigan State teams that are sneaky and get on a run. I could see that. I could see this very important win launch them. But man, they can't afford many more games like they had Wednesday night.
Uh, Titel, the Iowa Hawkeyes, nice 2-0 week. Got the win at Washington. Always tough to go cross country, especially at, I don't know, the Big Ten's probably designated as a top rivalry because they like to do that with weird games. But how about the Hawkeyes?
Very impressed by Coach McCollum in his first year in Iowa City. Their offense looks solid, top 20 in the nation. Defense, not much worse, top 25 in the nation. They are now won 6 in a row. Should make it 7 in a row at Maryland on Wednesday, and then the huge home game against Purdue on Valentine's Day. This team seems to be mostly about Bennett Sturts, as he's a strong contender for first team all conference. Though there's so many great point guards in the Big Ten, I could argue he's not even like in the top five amongst point guards because there's so many like Fears and Smith, et cetera, et cetera. But they're really outperforming what I thought they were going to do. You know how I like first year coaches, but to be 18-5 and on a hot streak, very impressive.
And I would like to pat myself on the back for being on in Iowa's corner for
Rocco, uh, Indiana, another team. I know they lost the game to USC, but as we record this, they're up on Oregon. They
Yep.
got the win over Wisconsin, albeit at home
Oof,
and in overtime. But I think
man.
this team is playing real well right now, actually.
Yeah, they've definitely improved the last few weeks. Nothing against the Hoosiers directly, but that was a really rough call on Wisconsin to lose. Um,
I saw it from many angles actually, and I think it was the right call. There was
yeah.
almost a step on the guy's foot on purpose. So
Yeah, I mean, either way, you just don't want to see a game decided that way. Hate
yeah.
to see that, even if it was, and hopefully it was the right call. I trust you, Chad.
Mhm.
But
I
but
don't.
Lamar Wilkerson is an unbelievable shooter, and he goes 1 for 8 from deep in that game, but made all 8 of his free throws, took the ball inside, made 7 2-pointers, and playing through him. I think helps them a lot. It allows Tucker to breeze more freedom to get open. He played all 45 minutes, Tucker, in the win. And Sam Alexis is always a player that I've liked. You know, he's been with Florida, he's been with Michigan, now he's on Indiana, and he's been on Alabama too. So good, what a journey he's
Mhm.
had. But he scraps and fights. He's a really good rebounder. He had 4 offensive rebounds in the game. That's huge for winning, getting those extra possessions. So I like the formula they're going with lately. Nick Dorn's had a big role. He didn't have a great game, but he's had a big role lately. Helped them in the USC game that you were mentioning, Chad. So yeah, I think this team's a tournament team, and they're going to just keep getting better by the week, is the way I'm seeing it.
Titel, I think you wanted a quick comment in on Purdue as well before we move on.
Great week for Coach Matt Painter. He had lost 3 in a row to finish January, but bounced back 30-point win over the Terps, close to win over the Ducks. Brutal schedule this month. At Nebraska, at Iowa, host Michigan, host Indiana, host Sparty. The offense is great. Number 3 in the nation, due in large part to Braden Smith. 958 career assists. He's number 8 all time. Should pass Sherman Douglas on Tuesday to move into 7th place. Needs 119 to pass Bobby Hurley for number 1. Interesting transformation for Trey Kaufman-Renn over the past year. Last year, only D1 player with 20 points, 6 boards, 2 assists per game. This year, much less scoring, 13 points a game, but much better on the other two, 8 rebounds, 3 assists a game. It's neat to see a guy, he just doesn't come out with the same skill set. He transforms his game to help the team.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and take a look at the upcoming schedule here. Stalika, other than the Oregon Indiana game going on right now, we start off tomorrow night with a pair of very interesting games, maybe a huge one here, the Purdue Nebraska game.
I feel like this is a game that Nebraska probably going to have a slight edge. Ohio State better have a sense of urgency when they're hosting USC. And then you look at UCLA, who could probably use a quality win themselves. And don't forget to highlight the pillow fight of the week when Penn State goes to Oregon, the resistible force versus the movable object.
Yeah.
Same for Maryland and Rutgers.
Oh, that Maryland Rutgers game, that could be Rutgers' only shot at avoiding the Stallings Award for worst power conference team. Also, a huge week, though. Rocco for Ohio State hosting USC, and then they get Joby's Who's here at a non-conference game on Saturday. I believe that game's in Nashville, if I'm correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, good opportunity. I mean, that's exactly why he scheduled it, the game. And credit to the Big Ten because a few of these teams, like Michigan, will play Duke in a week. The ACC was proactive as well. Louisville's playing Baylor. I don't know if we touched on that yet.
Mhm.
So we're trying to get more of that in the sport. I think we need it at the mid-major level,
Yes.
especially the
Yes.
strong mid-major level. Like if we had Santa Clara playing VCU this weekend, how cool would that be? So it's good that we have some of it, and it's huge for Ohio State, and it's huge for the Big Ten because Virginia is a protected seat, as Joby will tell you, and it will make the Big Ten look very strong if they can go to Nashville and beat the Who's.
Yeah.
Let's hope
Let's
that doesn't happen.
Doesn't mean
Joby
it's going to
doesn't.
happen. No, it doesn't. But
Joby
there's an
does not like that
But
opportunity.
idea.
There's an
it's
opportunity.
the Rocco, you're right. And the reason why, at least from the ACC perspective, is the 8 team versus 20 game schedule. This game does not happen last year because there just wouldn't be room in the schedule. Instead, teams are encouraged. You mentioned Duke. You mentioned uh, uh, the Louisville, Baylor. Teams are encouraged to go out and fill that weekend and not just sit at home and not just use it as a bye. And that's a big bonus here. It'll
This
help both
season has
teams.
been hell enough for me. Don't lose to the Buckeyes and make it even worse for me down here in Cincy.
Put them in the tournament.
I'm I would pick us. I'll just
I
leave it
would
at
too.
that. I could be wrong, but I feel good about that game.
Uh, Griggs, let's jump over to the ACC. And just this evening, uh, Louisville finished off a perfect week by
Yeah.
absolutely demolishing an NC State team. You're right up this morning. You said that you were looking forward to this game. I think I turned it off after about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Mikel
I
Brown Jr., 45 points tonight. Ridiculous.
I was looking forward to it, and for the first 7 minutes, it was a hell of a game. It actually wasn't even by then. Louisville had dominated them. It was Louisville was at home, but this was still just an unbelievably impressive performance against an NC State team that I thought had finally caught fire and was really trending up, and that had a chance to get a really massive win and sort of announce themselves as a team that's top 25 caliber and being in the top half of the bracket and all of that. And they lost by 41. And had Brown not played at all, Louisville still NC State wins by 4. So I guess you got to give them some credit for that.
Yeah. As you say, coming off the way they won at SMU, they beat Va Tech this week. It was
Yeah,
a good
they
week
were
heading into this game.
steamrolling. Yeah. I mean, they had a
Uh,
huge amount of momentum built up going into that game, and Louisville just dump trucked them. I mean, it was really impressive. It wasn't that the wheels fell off for NC State, it's that the whole car exploded.
uh, of course, the game in the ACC this week was the North Carolina Duke game. Uh, I know a couple of you on comments on it. Joby, let me start with you, then I'll go to Tytel.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, I'll let Tytel go into the full rundown. We know this is a huge win for Carolina. Coming on top of the road. I know it's at home, so it doesn't count, Griggs. Uh,
No, it does. When you beat
but
a
they
team
did.
that good at home, yeah.
All it shows is that the win over Virginia was not a fluke, so to
Yeah.
speak. But I think Duke is still just Duke showed to me a lot of ability, and it also showed that Shire has really come into his own and learned from Coach K to totally deflect a loss by talking about incidents unrelated that Chad will definitely want to go into. It is, I saw Kay do it over and over again. I'm now seeing Shire do it. I'm kind of sick of it. Sorry. I don't care if your coach got punched.
Oh,
I
come
just,
on.
Yeah.
Mick
I
Cronin
said,
has made it.
because he
Mick
probably
Cronin has made
wasn't,
an
because
art
there is
form of
tons
that
of
during the
video and I
shootout
haven't seen a
too.
single bit of video on it. So sorry. No, it's easy to
Uh,
make up. Yes,
you know,
I'm going there.
that was North Carolina's first lead of the game came after 39 minutes, 59 seconds, and 6/10 of a second had been played.
Yes. Yes. Amazing play by
Yeah.
Tremble. Amazing play.
It was an
I'll let
amazing
John
end. Amazing
go
ending.
into it.
This is another game that just goes down as a classic of this rivalry. Tytel, I know you had a few thoughts on the game as well, and on Duke.
Yeah, I mean, Joby covered most of it, so I'm just gonna say that like you have to remember, like their two losses this year are 1 point to Texas Tech in the Garden after blowing a 17-point lead with 17 minutes left, and then the 3-point road loss where they lost in the final second. So they're literally like a point and a shot away from being undefeated. And it's certainly not as impressive as Jordan's championship clincher over Georgetown in the title game in '82, but I think Trimble's shot goes down as one of the best in school history, given the opponent. And last year, Duke's adjusted offensive efficiency was 130.1. That wasn't just the highest in Ken Palm last year, but the highest in Ken Palm's 29-year history. And even after losing several stars to the draft, they haven't dropped off that much thanks to Cam Boozer. Second in the nation, 23 points a game. First in the ACC, 10 rebounds a game.
Uh, a couple other teams worth mentioning here. First of all, Rocco, you want to talk a little bit about Miami and especially the week ahead?
It's a huge week for Miami. They desperately need a win against a tournament team. They do not have one because Stanford has fallen off of the map, and this is a huge week. You got North Carolina in your building tomorrow night. That's got to be a win, no matter how you slice it. And it's a great time to play them. They're off the emotional high of beating their rival. They're flying into Coral Gables. They got to get that done, in my opinion. And then they go to NC State Saturday. I feel like NC State's going to be pretty angry about the way they performed today. So that does not shape up as well. So that's why I think there's extra importance on this game tomorrow with the Tar Heels.
Uh, Go ahead, Griggs.
Oh, well said. I mean, I was starting to think that this is just like at this point in the year, whenever anybody's on the bubble, every game feels pivotal. This is a pivotal week for the Canes.
And they also play Virginia Tech and Virginia next week. So the next
Yeah,
four are all pretty big.
yeah,
Uh, Huge stretch there. They got the road test at SMU, home Louisville to end the season too. So there are chances ahead for the Canes.
yeah.
Um,
Those
Still,
are 7 tough games because at Florida State for Miami is not a gimme. So,
Well,
I mean,
they
Florida
lost to them
State's
at
playing a
home. They
lot
lost
better.
to
Yeah,
them at
I mean, yeah,
on
they
Florida
lost at
State.
home earlier this year.
they lost
So
to them at
that's
home.
7 of their next 8 are really, really
Challenging.
Yeah,
challenging.
and if
They've
they lose to
backloaded that
Boston
schedule.
College, they're disqualified by rule. So
Stalika, one other game worth mentioning. And how about Clemson? Cal had been playing so good, red hot team. They went out there and they demolished them by 22 points.
That was also on the heels of Clemson getting a narrow win at Stanford, who had already been leaking oil. But Cal had shown some flashes of brilliance, and with Clemson getting a 22-point win on the road, now that's going to also bring some questions for the Bears. But as far as Clemson, they're going to need that win because you get Virginia Tech coming up and also a game at Cameron later in the week where they'll probably be shooting for the moon, but the rest of the schedule, it is going to be manageable with a potential road win at Wake. You also get Louisville at home. Carolina's going to be a little bit tough, but not a terribly tough stretch for the Tigers here.
That game coming up here at Duke, though, over the weekend, that could be for the ACC regular season championship if Clemson somehow pulls it off. I know they still got the game at Carolina to go, but they would then hold the tiebreaker over Duke for that. So,
And I believe 1990 was the last calendar, or 1989-90 was the last time Clemson actually won the regular season ACC.
bunch of games with no noteworthy coming up here this week. We mentioned already another non-conference game. This one's in Fort Worth, I believe, Louisville Baylor. So it should be a pro Baylor crowd, I would think.
yeah, and
Maybe.
Louisville
See,
hasn't. Yeah, Louisville hasn't been the best team away from home this year, but I still think after watching them the night, you have to like their chances.
been a rough year
All,
for Baylor too.
Yeah.
Also,
On top of
keep
that,
keep an eye on Cal this week. They
yes,
have that at Syracuse, at BC road trip that they need to sweep.
it's not
Especially
going to
Yes.
because
be
lose
easy.
to
It's
BC
not.
is
Yeah, this is
yeah.
this is a great call, Chad, because
Yeah.
it's a Cal team that the jury's definitely still out. Are they good enough to handle something like this? I we're going to learn a lot, I think, this week.
Yeah, and they need to sweep it. These are
They
not.
do need to sweep it.
If
Yeah,
you're a tournament caliber team, if you're inside the bubble, you need to win those games, even though they're on the road.
correct.
Let's jump over to the Big 12, where ooh, that is not the Big 12, guys. That is the A10.
That
We'll
is
come
very
back there.
much
We'll
No,
not
come
the
no
back
Big
wonder it's so
12.
there.
pretty. It was so much prettier than the Big 12.
Yeah.
Uh, Taitel, let me start with you. Where do we want to start? How about Iowa State?
How about him, Shad? Very impressive week If I can find them here. Um, they've just been Coach Otzelberger
Trying to load
dropped
it.
2 in a row last month. The Kansas and Cincinnati. He's bounced back in a big way. 5 game winning streak, tied for third place in the conference. Top 11 in the nation in both adjusted offensive and defensive efficiency. Fourth in the nation with 41% shooting behind the arc. Winnable game at TCU on Tuesday, and then the homestand of the year. Host Kansas on Valentine's Day. Host Houston 48 hours later. They got some bad news last week. Mason Williams is out all year due to hip surgery, it turns out. Fortunately, they still have one of the best all-around players in the country in Joshua Jefferson, the best defender in school history in Taman Lipsey, and the best three-point shooter in the world in Milan Momcilovic.
Uh, After that Kansas Houston homestand, Rocco, their next game is going to be at BYU. And how about a team that is just heading in the wrong direction completely right now? Uh, I know they played a lot of tough games, but you sandwich in that loss to Oklahoma State, and that's what hurt, I think.
Yeah, it did hurt. It made you look at them a little differently because the other losses are pretty elite. You know, Kansas, Houston, Arizona, UConn, Texas Tech. You can forgive all those, right? But the Oklahoma State loss, you know, that's a team that we have no idea if they're a tournament team or not.
They're not.
BYU is supposed to be a top 15 type team. They certainly have a top 15, probably a top five salary in the country. And so that's where the disappointment is. You know, Dabonsa was maybe they played too much through him because he goes for 36 in the Oklahoma State loss. But at the same time, you know, he turned it over 5 times. And the teammates, you know, Saunders had 20, Robert Wright had 15. But overall, they turned it over 16 times as a team and just a little too sloppy, and they couldn't get a stop. Like Oklahoma State scored at will against this team, and that's probably if I was a BYU fan, that would be my biggest concern.
A few other games of note here as we record this, just seconds left. It actually did just go to halftime. Arizona up 45-42 at Kansas. Um, Joby, Kansas has been playing so well here. We
Yes.
don't know what's
Yes,
going to
they
happen
have.
in the second half. I did read early today that Kansas is undefeated at home on Big Monday all time. That
Really?
streak could be going down tonight.
Well, I mean, Arizona's, yeah, Titel's Arizona team would be a reason for it to go down. But I'm actually shocked by that because it's not for a lack of games. Because I feel like Kansas plays big money almost every week. But Kansas, we were kind of saying, "Oh, this Kansas team, everybody loves Peterson." Yeah, I mean, et cetera. But does Peterson play all the time? And Kansas was getting a lot of skepticism, and rightfully so, from this crowd, including me. Uh, then the Big 12 season started, and they have decided we're going to play, and the wins their 8-2 record is against the tougher part of their schedule for the most part. Ignore Utah, in the Big 12 at Texas Tech is an outstanding win. Like this is Texas Tech. You want to talk protected seeds? I can question like St. John's or BYU or some of these others, but not Texas Tech. That is a great win in Lubbock. And Kansas is on their way up to a 2 or 3 right now. And don't be surprised if at the end of the night their streak is still undefeated against Arizona. It's the sort of place and Titel, there's a part of me who says you guys want to lose one game, and this is a one that is perfectly understandable to do so.
I still don't think he wants to lose the game.
Yeah.
Well, you probably don't want to lose the game, but you got to lose one.
No,
I'm
Joby's
serious.
point is well
You don't want
taken.
that
That like
pressure,
it's one
man.
thing if you go into the tournament undefeated and not knowing what it takes to win a close game and how it feels to lose. I think he's very right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh, let's,
at Houston figures to be a loss, I would say. But we'll
uh,
see. Arizona's
I think
freaking good,
Kansas and
man.
Houston
Freaking
are on the
good.
Arizona
same plane
is,
as long as Peterson's playing. I mean, it's sad that I have to make that, will he get a cramp and sit for 20 minutes and stuff? It does drive me nuts, and it's why I'm skeptical on Kansas for the long term in the NCAA tournament. But in terms of a one night game against Arizona, Kansas, Houston, I think it's six in one hand, half dozen another.
being told Peterson did not play the first half of tonight's game even,
Of course he didn't.
and that's why they're down three. Stalika, I know you want to talk about UCF, especially with what they did. Yes, they lost at Houston. They got blown out, but it's at Houston. But then just yesterday at Cincinnati by 20 points.
Yeah, this also happened after we had finished recording our bracket rundown, and I had convinced the panel to put UCF as the last seventh seed. I would definitely not have put them in that position after what they did, or actually did not do against Cincinnati, and that's make Wes Miller look like Rasputin, like he cannot be killed, he cannot be fired, which as a Xavier fan, that actually makes me pretty happy. But if you're UCF, now you're talking about adding a bad loss to your profile. Don't be fooled. It might say tier one, but Oklahoma State and Cincinnati, those are not tournament teams that they are losing to right there. And now you're starting to talk about potentially wearing dark in the first round. And with their week upcoming against West Virginia and TCU, you
Mm.
better hold serve in those games, and you definitely cannot slip up at Utah
Uh,
a
pull
couple weeks from
Cincinnati,
now.
pull Cincinnati up real quick. What is their? And the only thing I want to look at here is what is their home record?
Uh,
Good, but not.
they,
I
they lost to Eastern Michigan
Yeah,
at
yes, they
home,
did.
Griggs.
Yeah. So I'm not going to make that point, but as awful as they are, they do have two pretty impressive scalps. One in particular, the win against Iowa State, which is the highest ranked team they've beaten, I think, since the Bronze Age or something.
But I think
That's a,
that loss against West Virginia at home also got the fans' hopes up that finally this is going to be the end of Wes Miller. But when he's beating up on UCF, not going to happen.
uh, rest of the schedule coming up this week. Iowa State at TCU tomorrow. Big opportunity for TCU to get themselves back in consideration. Same with BYU at Baylor. I would say. Might be an
BYU
interesting week
needs
for
that one.
Oklahoma State, who is maybe not on the bubble but near the bubble. At Arizona State hosting TCU. Of course, Texas Tech at Arizona on Saturday.
Yeah.
Kansas at Iowa State on Saturday. The Baylor Louisville game on Saturday. Houston at Iowa State on
That
Monday.
that one is, oh man, that's another massive Big 12 game on a Monday night.
I
Yeah,
was going to say that is not a massive Big 12 game on a Sunday, though.
Yeah.
I clicked the wrong button, Sleek. I was
Yeah.
trying to do it. Oh no, Utah, Cincinnati, we are not highlighting. However, let's jump over to the West Coast Conference, um, and let's talk about. Uh, Titel, let me start with you and maybe get a few other thoughts here about what happened last Wednesday night when Gonzaga went to Portland against a team that had to take a grad assistant who still had 1 year of eligibility left and put him onto the court to play because they were so short on players, and that team somehow beat the Zags.
So, like, there's not a lot that shocks me these days in college basketball because it seems like we've seen it all. But when Mark Few loses, like, there's plenty of excuses for losing on the road, and it's by 7 points. And one of their best players, Braden Huff, is still injured. But counterpoint, it's arguably, and I'll defer to Rocco on all things West Coast Conference, the biggest upset in the history of the conference. I believe the Zags were a 22.5 point favorite. Their problem seems to be 3 point shooting. Last year, 35.4%, the worst in the Few era. Right now, 35.2%. They're getting worse somehow. And Few announced yesterday that Huff is, quote, not even close to returning. So that's something you should keep in mind for the weeks ahead. In his absence, Graham Ike keeps playing like the conference tourney MVP from that he is from last year. 24 and 10 in the loss to Portland, followed up with 35 points on 13 of 18 shooting in the 20-point win at Oregon State. I believe their first ever win at the Beavers, which I still don't believe. And they should be able to beat Washington State on Tuesday. And then they head to Santa Clara on Saturday, which, again, for Rocco, I think this is arguably the biggest game in Broncos history. Could the number one seed in the conference tournaments on the line?
I
Rocco.
will be there. I will be there. Yes. Too big of a game to miss. They beat them there last year. Should be an electric night. I'm sure Steve Nash will make an appearance, and I don't know what the Oklahoma City schedule is, but
Um,
if Mr. Williams is available, he'll probably be there too. But yeah, I think the same.
Steve Nash is right now trying to get an injunction from a judge granting him eligibility to play.
Yeah, he'll be at the Santa Clara
Yeah.
County office law office the morning of the game, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, Santa Clara is the big story, I think, because of the position they're in. They've never started 12-1 in the WCC. Well, they did once. It was the year with Nash, 94, 95. So I take that back. But they did finish 12-2 that season. They only played 14 league games, and a win this week in the first game of the week against Seattle, I believe, would give Santa Clara the first 13-1 start ever. Obviously, the big thing for them is that Loyola Chicago loss. They have the big one with Gonzaga we keep talking about. They have the road St. Mary's game later this month, and they got to split those. I think if they split those and they hold serve against everybody else, they're going to find a way in. And there's just a ton of excitement around that.
Still a couple weeks away, but that game at San Francisco could be a huge trap game for them too. So
It
they got
is.
to
It's
be
a big
real
rivalry
careful.
game.
I don't
Yeah,
know
they
if it's
get
a
after each
trap
other.
game. Yeah, I mean, it's not like they're going to overlook that. It's just that it's a
No,
really emotional rivalry game.
it is.
Yeah.
I'm getting requests from Stalika to pull up the Seattle Redhawks. So here you are, Stalika, the Seattle Redhawk.
Yeah,
There's the Seattle Redhawks.
it was a big night last night for all kind of birds in Seattle. Red Hawks, Seahawks, whatever you want to say. Their fans were on fire. It was like even 4 days before with their close win at
Yeah.
Pepperdine.
Yeah. Um, St. Mary's did get a 2-0 week, did need to do what they need to do, but let's just quickly take a look at the upcoming schedule here.
Yep.
The big game is the Zags at Santa Clara on Saturday. St. Mary's hosting Pepperdine at Pacific really needs a 2-0 week this week, too.
And
Yeah.
Pacific's playing a lot better. That's not going to be an easy game for St. Mary's.
One more historical note on the Portland win over Gonzaga. Right now, Gonzaga is 7 and it pulled Portland up to 204. I want to say that they were 210 spots apart. Who knows where they'll end up? It's not that, you know, upsets like that have never happened, but they don't happen very often. I think it's the percentage of something like that happening when two teams are that far apart is less than what the percentage of times a 16 has beaten a one, and we've seen it twice in about a 4 week period. The other one
Oh,
being an under the radar upset IU Indy over Oakland.
yeah, I think that was more than 200 spots though.
Yeah,
That's the game you
it was,
and
but
that was on the blacktop at Oakland, which was
yeah,
even more mystifying.
So
yeah,
let's
but this
let's
was
I'll
a
jump.
be honest,
massive
Greg,
upset. Just
Loyola
pointing that out.
Chicago over Santa Clara is like 250. I
Might
mean,
might end up might end up there, yeah. But Joby, let's jump over to the Mountain West, and I'm going to let you have at it with this conference. Utah State did get a 2-0 week.
New Mexico,
Oh my goodness.
that
Oh
that you can't lose to Boise, man.
no.
Yeah, yeah,
At
yeah.
home.
And I understand. Oh well, Boise, and Boise is like NIT-ish, but the fact that you haven't compiled the wins and this conference is in trouble because of it. There just aren't the out of conference wins against tournament teams. There aren't. It's just not there. And Santa Clara, might give them a game. Might give them a win. By transitive property, because they did beat. Because New Mexico did take out Santa Clara, but that's why New Mexico, I might add, is still in the field probably as of this moment, even with the losses.
Got some
But they're
good
in
games left
Dayton.
too.
But they're in Dayton. They're not before they were 10, high 11. Now they're in Dayton. They're on the edge. They can't lose to the Lopes. You can't do it. Can't do it. Sorry. You can't. And Chad, I know you like Nevada and they're coming up, but you can't lose to them. Or Nevada will take your place, maybe even as we take.
Well,
So
Nevada does have a little war at
and
the
it
bottom.
doesn't get higher than Wyoming. Wyoming almost pulled off an upset this week,
They did.
as well. New Mexico has a tough road. Hey, if they go through it and they go against this schedule that we're looking at, if they go 6-1 with a win or two in the Mountain West Conference tournament, they're probably in. But they go 5-2 in that. I think they're in trouble, depending what the rest of the bubble is doing.
I think one of their issues is they're just not quite as good as I thought they were a couple of weeks ago. You say they can't lose at Grand Canyon. I'll be stunned if they win that game.
Let's real quick
And
here.
with that, Joby has just left. Oh
Joby
no, he's
left.
back.
Okay, we got
Yeah.
Joby back. Titel, if New Mexico's sliding off, though, does San Diego State kind of slide into that spot as the second Mountain West team now?
I think I have them as one of my final teams in the whole field. They are playing with fire to be sure. 17-6 overall, losing at the Lopes by a point last month. I don't think it's going to ruin their whole profile, but certainly didn't help. No shame in losing at Utah State by 5 last month as well. Huge game at home against Chad's Nevada team on Valentine's Day, and then a couple winnable games before the rematch with Utah State on February 25th. They're getting it done with defense as usual. The offense needs a lot of work, but I believe in Coach Dutcher, and I would hate to think that the Troy doubler back in November ruins their resume as well. Hopefully not.
Well, Troy may end up being an NCAA tournament team, and that might get at least a little uh, something there. But upcoming games this week, we mentioned that New Mexico big one at Grand Canyon that they've got to win. Also, here's another non-conference game. Rocco, Memphis at Utah State on Saturday.
Yeah, a little Valentine's Day love from Penny Hardaway coming to Logan, Utah. That's a home and home series. They're going to do it again next year on Valentine's Day in Memphis. Obviously, going into the season, that was really exciting. If Memphis had their traditional at-large level team, but unfortunately, it's just a quad three home game for the Aggies now.
And round two of the border war Saturday, Wyoming, Colorado State. That's how you should be spending your Valentine's Day.
Yeah,
Tell
that's how I am spending my
No
Valentine's Day.
love lost in that game.
uh, let's jump over real quick over to the A10 and Rocco. Let me stick with you with one of only I believe five teams. Maybe I think it's five teams, maybe six. I believe it's five teams that are left that are undefeated in conference this year. Uh, the St. Louis Billikens. They just keep winning games.
Yeah, they're freaking awesome. And they should be 24. They should be 24 and 0. So it's been a heck of a year. I hope the ride continues far into March, hopefully even into April. But yeah, like just dominating and they had a couple guys hurt lately. There it seems like everybody's back in the last game, so all is good in St. Louis for now. And this upcoming week. They are going to go to Loyola Chicago on Friday, which just always makes me a little nervous because because they're a quad four road game. But it's like I saw Loyola Chicago beat Santa Clara, and I was the color commentator for that game, and I was like, this looks like the normal Loyola Chicago. So if they get the good version of the Ramblers in a rowdy environment in Chicago Friday night on national TV, it could be a dangerous game. Otherwise, you would just hope St. Louis gets off to their typical 30-10 start and they'll cruise right through it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Titel, VCU is a team that I've been talking about for a few weeks now. Seven in a row. Is this team not have a path? Don't they have a serious path here to the NCAA tournament if they can just keep beating, piling up these wins against some of these bad teams, at least until they go to St. Louis on the 20th?
Yes, so if they lose to St. Louis but win the other six, I believe that'll make them 24-7 with a top 100 strength of schedule and a good record against tiers 1 through 3. It's certainly in the mix, Chad, and does definitely deserve to be under consideration on our Sunday night shows. But I think that, I mean, do you think that if they lose to St. Louis and then lose to the Billikens again in the title game that they're in? Because I do not.
Well, I think that's a real interesting profile, though. Joby, look at this VCU profile. You add in a win at Dayton, you add in a home wins over GW and George Mason, and maybe you
No,
beat George Mason again in the semifinals. All you have is two losses to St. Louis, who's number 15 in the net.
I'm
That's all you
trying to
add in
find a
here.
tournament win. Yeah, without a St. Louis win, you
South
gotta
Florida.
beat
South
somebody.
Florida's a tournament team.
Virginia Tech.
Somebody. Virginia Tech is not even in, like I said in relation earlier, Virginia Tech is not even in the first four out anymore. Sorry, St. Mary's. That hurts you. It also hurts VCU. Oh, wait a minute. Everybody is beating Virginia Tech, of course, except for Virginia through three overtimes. The sorry, I'm not there on VCU, and it depends what the rest of the bubble is. obviously. I mean, if you see implosions from the bottom half of the ACC like Miami, and if you see the Mountain West commit harikari at the end, of course there's a pathway. But they need help outside their own selves unless they beat St. Louis. Beat St. Louis. Uh, let's talk.
So
I'm
you say
looking at
you,
VCU's profile. I'm wondering if the team most likely to get an auto bid is St. Peter's.
Yeah, probably.
I still think South Florida, but let's
Yeah, yeah.
let's take a quick, congrats to Davidson, first of all, big non-conference win today over Mid-Atlantic.
One
Chris,
of the best tweets I've seen is that I didn't realize the A10 had replaced Dayton so quickly.
uh, I will quick note that the George Mason story has probably come to an end with a home loss to Duquesne of last week. Uh, Impressive record still, but we want to criticize VCU's profile. This is way, way worse.
It is.
Um,
But they did beat VCU.
Yeah.
Upcoming games this week: St. Louis. We mentioned that game at Loyola, VCU, at LaSalle, and at Richmond. But one other team to discuss.
Yeah.
Still undefeated in conference, still undefeated overall. Rocco, Miami, Ohio. Also not an impressive profile, but they got one thing that nobody else we've looked at has, and that's 0 losses.
That's right. And they are a great group of winners, play for each other. And I thought their win at Marshall on Saturday in the Sun Belt MAC Challenge was arguably their best performance of the year.
I think
You
it
know that
was. Yeah, I think it was.
they had a Bob Huggins appearance wearing Marshall gear, sipping cocktails. The place was going to be rowdy all day for the pregame, and they just came out and crushed them right out of the gate. The game was never close, and I think that bodes really, really well for the future because I had last week circled with the 2 road games at Buffalo, at Marshall. They handled it, and all that's left now is road UMass a week from tomorrow. Could be really interesting. The road directional Michigan games don't worry me too much, and then they finish at Ohio U at the end, and they have Ohio U at home this Friday. So I think the train's going to keep rolling, Chad.
Yeah, Stalika, that Ohio game, that's a pretty good rivalry, though, if I'm correct. And this is an ESPN national telecast on Friday night against Ohio. They're really highlighting them.
This is what they call the Battle of the Bricks. Not a Hoops HD rivalry, but this is their actual arch rival right here, and
Yeah.
it's going to be on ESPNU. The game has already
ESPN,
been announced, or
ESPN one. It's been upgraded.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's going to be a sellout at Millett Hall for this one, and even for their remaining 2 home games against Bowling Green and Toledo. Tickets are starting to run out pretty quickly.
Yeah. This is a fun rivalry. It doesn't have the stage that the wagon wheel has, but the Battle of the Bricks can be fun. I don't know how competitive this edition of it is going to be, but be sure and tune in because there is a lot of energy, a lot of people in that community, alumni, really getting behind Miami, Ohio. To get back to a point that Joby made earlier about Arizona, about how maybe you need to lose a game, so you need to know how it feels. I agree. I don't think Miami, Ohio, if they finish undefeated, will go on and win the national championship without a hope.
I think one other
I
interesting thing to point out, if you want to get a ticket for Miami at Ohio, it's currently $12, but if Miami somehow manages to run the table up until then, that's going to command a lot more money on the secondary market
Yeah.
will
on
tell. I'll tell
merch.
you what worries me about them going defeated is the fact they do have those 2 Ohio games left. You mentioned the big rivalry, and you haven't played them even once yet. That's what scares me with them going defeated, that they lose one of these 2 Ohio games.
Not to
Even
mention you also have Angry Frank lurking
I'm not. I
because
think they win
UMass
that
did give
one.
him a close. They
I
they were
think they
close
win
at
that one.
Millette.
Anyhow, that's it for the day. We're going to go to a couple of things here. We're going to go to final thoughts, but as you we give you my final thoughts, as you give me your final thoughts, I'll throw something out there also for you to each of you to comment on. Now we are 5 weeks away from Selection Sunday, I believe, by my math, which might be wrong. Um, we've had a lot of data now. Who do you currently think is your Final Four and national champion teams at this point in the season as we get into the middle of February? And Tytel, since I know you want the screen share for the rest of your final thought, I'll start with you.
You want my final thoughts first or my picks first?
Your choice, either way.
I'll do the picks while we Get it rolling. So my original four were Gonzaga, Houston, Purdue, and Tennessee. I think I'm giving up on the Vols. They keep showing flashes, but not sure. I believe in the Zags and Houston and Purdue. They certainly are all have some holes in their resumes, but I believe in them. And as long as my Wildcats are undefeated, like how can I not put them in for Tennessee? And how can I not pick them to win it all? And of course, I'm sure that'll jinx them horribly, but I've got to do it. As far as
Man,
my final thought, I'm going to go with Elijah Arenas. He's having a very good 2026 after a very rough 2025. Last April, his Tesla Cybertruck lost a collision with a tree and fire hydrant. The crash was so serious that he was placed into an induced coma. And then last July, surgery on his torn meniscus. He was out for 6 to 8 months. Last month marked the 1 year anniversary of him choosing USC rather than his father's alma mater of Arizona. But it looks like a good choice. In his past 6 games since getting back on the court, Trojans are 4-2, two losses by a combined 7 points. And on Sunday at Penn State, the game-winning layup with zero point 0.7 seconds left. I've seen him projected as a top 10 pick in some mock drafts, even though he's literally played 6 college games. But with the super freshman back in the lineup, USC is now capable of not just bringing their A game, Chad, but rather their AA game.
game.
Oh boy.
I got to get that cymbal crash ready more when you do your final thoughts, Title. Let's
Yes.
let's run through a few other the rest of you here. Sleek, let me go to you next.
It's a good thing Chad doesn't have crickets on his board because I'm afraid he may have that on loop pretty soon. Oh,
Yeah.
speak of the devil. But I think as far as my final thought and my final four picks, they are going to be a little bit intertwined now because two of the teams I think that probably will make the final four now are going to be Michigan and Illinois. I really do think the Big Ten is finally starting to expand some of their depth. That's probably going to make a deep run in the tournament this year. Purdue is going to be also within the mix. A team like Nebraska, well, you'll at least win a tournament game or two, which is more than what they've ever done in the past. But as far as who I think is going to be in the Final Four at this point, I think you got to go with Arizona. I will take Michigan and Illinois, and I do think UConn finds a way to get it done over Duke because for whatever reason, John Shire's teams has not been able to make the final step into the Final Four, and that's even with guys like Cooper Flag at his disposal in recent years.
And your champion would be?
If I had to go for a champion, I'm going to go ahead and say Michigan does find a way to get
Ooh.
it done.
Goes with
Wow.
Michigan. All right, Rocco.
Yeah, it's funny. John had three of the four based on Bracketeer.org's latest bracket. And that's the only way you can really pick it. You have to see the
Yeah.
matchups. And so I have Arizona dominating the West, Illinois knocking off Duke in the East. I have Florida winning the South region, which knocked out one of the other teams I really like, which is Houston. But I can't see Florida losing to Houston. I saw that game last year, and I just think that it's a tough matchup for the Cougs. And then the last spot, almost by default, goes to Michigan because I think out of that whole region in the Midwest, that's the only team I really like. So three of the same four as Stalika, but I'll give you a surprise champion with the Gators repeating as national champions, and that would be from a 4 seed spot on the last bracket. They might be a 3 seed on the next one, but they're just playing so darn well, and they're basically just telling everybody, "Hey, we're going to go in the paint, we're going to brutalize you, and you're not going to do anything about it." Like they did to Alabama when they had 72 points in the paint. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see if anybody can slow them down from here.
I like it. I like the pick. Joby.
Well, Rocco went with my preseason pick,
You did.
Florida.
We,
Um,
we criticized you that for a
and
couple
so
of
I
months.
decided to have a little fun and look at the Hoops HD bracket that I suggest everybody look at the selection show from last night. And I am choosing off those regions like Duke. I think the Boozer brothers, specifically Cam, is the best player in the country, and he is. They've got a team around him. Actually like the way they played at Carolina in the loss, and that says something. Michigan rolling. Love them. They are such a good team to watch. I do like them out of the Midwest bracket. In the South, I do not on the UConn train. I think Houston is you know Sampson's proven it. He can make a Final Four. I like Houston out of that region. And Titel, until your boys take a loss, as we've discussed in this show, this is where I go with the Gators. And that is a matchup I would imagine you don't want if you see because of the height that Rocco discussed. But I'm going to go against the Gators as the champion. Michigan has just flat out impressed me with not just the wins they've collected, but how they've done it. How they've done it has just blown me away. I did not see this coming. Good for the Wolverines. My final thought, real short, is when you look at the bubble, there's a lot of pairings among conference mates. I think it could be a situation of one in, one out in many cases. Um, we've talked about New Mexico. I think San Diego State, you can definitely still talk in those categories. St. Mary's, Santa Clara. The ACC is full of it with Miami and Cal. And you can even talk about that Virginia Tech team drifting. Ohio, Missouri, Georgia, watch out because I think they're both going to collect some more losses, but I think one makes it. And so I think the pairings are going to show over time, and that might be at the end of the day how this is decided on the bubble.
It's funny you mentioned some of the pairings towards the bottom of the bracket. Chad did something very unusual while he was seeding the bracket yesterday. We couldn't put any of the first four games on the 11 line. We had to bump one group up to the 10 line and another group down to the 12 line because of the bracketing rules that were in place.
It was one of the stranger first four I've ever encountered, just the way we did it. And that's why you'll see, as Slika mentioned, they should both be at the 11 line. We got one on the 10 and one on the 12. But before I go to Griggs with his final thought, my personal final four, I agree with Joby on three of the teams. I like Duke, I like Michigan, I like Houston a ton. My fourth team in there, which I don't even know that, I think one of you mentioned so far, is my final four, is my national champion as well. I'm going with the Illini. I know they lost the game in Michigan State, but the way they're playing right now, uh, I hate to say it because I think the Big Ten may have designated them as Rutgers' number one rival. Who knows who they've designated, but I'm going Illinois. Griggs?
I think that similar to last year, this year's tournament, I think we're entering sort of an era for this year, last year, and the foreseeable future to where there's way more chalk than what we've had in the past, and you can probably uh every year there's going to be about 10 teams to where no one that makes the Final Four comes out of that group of 10. Um, more often than not. So with that, Arizona, it's hard to not pick against them. Not only have they been impressive, they've gone everywhere and in really hard environments and won. I love how Michigan's playing. I would pick them in there. Illinois. I don't really know who to pick for my fourth team. I guess I'll go with Texas Tech, not so much because I think they'll get there now, but because they were my preseason pick to win it all, and I kind of like to stick with my guns. And my team to win it all now is Michigan, simply because I just think Dusty May, as a bench coach, as an attitude that when they get into those close games, ever since he was even down at Florida Atlantic, they just know how to win those big games. And I think Michigan cuts the nets down.
All
My
right.
final thought.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, it's going to go back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show in this court ruling. I do think it's important. It's not that I like to see somebody lose an opportunity like that and lose his eligibility, but for me, one of the things that's important about college athletics, be it basketball, football, the Olympic sports, or whatever, is that kids coming out of high school have the chance to compete at that level. And I hate to think that high school students that are 18 and 19 are losing those opportunities to grown adults who are in their mid 20s who have played professionally and around the world. And I'd kind of like to say something to the NCAA because I know they follow us very closely, and that's that if you consult with your own athletes that are here now, and if you talk to SAC, I think you'd find that they want the eligibility rules in place. They don't want the courts to throw them out because a lot of them have said I believe it or not, I don't know. Athletes talk to the puppet a lot, and I have a sense for these things. They don't want to be playing against people in their mid to late 20s. They adamantly don't. I think they would be on your side in that case, and I don't know why the NCAA has not done more to solicit them. Why haven't you solicited SAC when it comes to not you not I'm not even talking about collectively bargaining. I'm just talking about talking to them and getting a statement from SAC saying they favor your eligibility rules. I think that that would carry a lot of weight in potentially future court cases. And I also think that you would be surprised to learn that they favor some other stuff, including parameters around NIL and transfer rules. To try and get some sanity back, you have to talk to the players. The ones that are, and why hasn't the NCAA done that? I don't know. Maybe I guess they're just stupid. Another thing that's kind of going on right now, I wanted to ask Rocco about it before, and it's just one of the mentions, is the players era teams and players, the teams that participated in that event have not received the NIL money that they were promised. And this is something that the NCAA can probably, I don't want to say take advantage of, but I don't know how else to put it, that a lot of players, a lot of them are frustrated with how their NIL deals have worked out or not worked out. They've been, if not promised, led to believe that they're going to receive more money than what they've actually received. So talk to the players. Do what the Supreme Court told you to do. And if you do, I think that you would learn that they're actually more with you than what you think.
Okay, first of all, I think that's for that we do a whole other podcast on that, and we are way over time already.
Yeah, we are.
But real quick, Griggs, for those that don't know, what is SAC?
Oh, I'm sorry, the Student Athletic Activities Council.
Thank you. That's across all schools. They all
Yeah,
participate in it.
yeah, Student Athlete Advisory Council. That's what it is. Yeah.
But on that note, I do want to thank everybody for joining us. We'll be back Wednesday night with an Under the Radar, Sunday night with a bracket rundown, next Monday with another Hoops HD report. On behalf of John Teitel, John Salika, Rocco Miller from Bracketeer.org, David Griggs, Joby Forts, and I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. Talk to you again real soon.